Looking back at, of course, shows like the Obi-Wan Kenobi series and the Book of Boba Fett, one thing that really led to those two shows getting a lot of criticism among the fans was a lot of things related to Kathleen Kennedy's calls and decisions on those two particular projects, because she had a contract with those series because prior to them being TV shows, they were supposed to be movies back in, of course, 2020 and or 2021. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel for future Star Wars updates. Also, by the way, guys, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you also very much for the kind support. It is greatly appreciated. Now, one thing that a lot of fans have been very worried about is exactly how the Star Wars shows like Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte are going to perform and how big of an impact it's going to have on the prequels. We already know that shows, of course, like the Acolyte in particular, is going to have a big impact on the prequel trilogy lore, since Kennedy will be utilizing a lot of retcons in that, and exactly what's going to happen with Skeleton Crew is that that too will have a lot of flashbacks to the prequel trilogy era, and exactly how it's going to give us more retcons, so to speak. So that's what Leslie Headland is doing with the Acolyte, and John Watts is also doing that with Skeleton Crew to a degree, leaving a lot of fans a little bit worried about what's going on. Now, that brings us to exactly what Kathleen Kennedy has been up to. Now, we already know that she is well into production for Skeleton Crew. Filming is about to wrap. They're getting very close to that, maybe like 4 weeks out. But with the Acolyte, they still got a ways to go, and she recently made a very drastic change that really got Disney very furious and really gave them, the moment in which they had to give her a big ultimatum. We're going to talk about that right now. So, with Kathleen Kennedy still busy with the Acolyte series and Skeleton Crew, she has been dealing with more problems lately from the higher-ups over at Disney as of late. Now, it's noted that Kennedy recently got into more trouble with the higher-ups over at Disney after she recently made a bad business call with the Acolyte series, and Disney is said to be furious about what she approved for the actual show. Now, it's noted that Kathleen Kennedy recently made a very big decision on completely changing the ending of the show at last minute, even while they have started filming already in real locations. Kennedy is now working with Leslie Headland on shifting around the climax to the series, and how it will have a big impact on the Phantom Menace film by George Lucas. This is something that the Disney board is very unhappy and worried about, as they believe that this is going to cause further backlash. Now, it is said to have something to do with a hint of the connections between the new characters and Darth Plagueis that will be raised as a controversial story element in the Star Wars series, and how it's connected to Episode 1 eventually. So let me just pause here for a second. Now, what Kennedy did was truly unacceptable, because she changed the entire ending of the Acolyte at last minute, even while they were filming on set and really doing all these, big moments in the actual show. The thing that I don't like about this is the fact that Kathleen Kennedy is really so determined and so, much in, pursuit of changing elements of the prequels, changing many different story elements of what George created way back when. And this big connection is said to have something big with Darth Plagueis, alright? Now, given that we don't know much about Plagueis in canon, we do know a lot about him in Legends. Now, the thing about Kathleen Kennedy going upon this has actually given Disney an opportunity to give Kathleen Kennedy yet again another ultimatum. We're going to talk about that more in a second, but a lot of it has to do with them creating now limitations on the marketing of the Acolyte series, because they have pretty much almost, zero optimism about this show. Pretty much, no ambitions about this series. They don't really feel it's going to be a success. And I think that's exactly why, when you look at the Acolyte as a show, Disney hasn't really been talking about it directly all that much, even though it is in production, even though it is, you know, shifting around its release date multiple times. It was supposed to come out next year. Now it's going to be 2024. It's actually said to be the first TV show of 2024, just like how The Bad Batch. So it could be like a January or February release, give or take. Now, moving on to the next big thing here, alright, is that, of course, George Lucas behind the scenes is said to be very upset about this biggest decision on a big canon change for Plagueis on his character. However, the silver lining to all of this, and there is one, is that Jon Favreau will be introducing Darth Plagueis in an upcoming series called The Circle of the Wills. Kennedy is creating some kind of big retcon in the Star Wars franchise that is going to involve something substantial with Plagueis. The series' end is said to jump ahead in time, closer to the prequels this time around, that will explain all of this. So before I get to the next thing, let's discuss this real quick. What in the world could this involve or have anything to do with Darth Plagueis, right? What could actually be happening with Plagueis in this actual story, right? It really does make you wonder exactly what they are about to embrace here, right? So, one thing that we are aware of is that the Acolyte takes 100 years. It takes place 100 years before Episode 1. And now the plan by Kennedy is to have the ending jump ahead in time, closer to the prequels, I guess, so they can make it that Plagueis is alive at that point in time, right? At least in the canon version. And this really does raise a couple of questions. Are we going to see Plagueis, or is it just going to be a reference as far as the retcons go? That we're not quite sure of yet. We'll talk about that if we come across anything. But one thing about this that is very true is that this is going to actually be a very controversial and a very touchy story element to mess around with. Let's not forget and make no mistake that what happened with the sequel trilogy, you know, was a great reminder that maybe you should learn from your mistakes. It doesn't seem like Kathleen Kennedy is. She doesn't seem to pay attention to all of that. She just views it as a minority of fans raising their voices. When in reality, it was really the hardcore fans, which really make up a large chunk of the fans, that fully support the franchise, that buy the merchandise, that see the movies, you know, 5 times if they're very well made. And, you know, when you come to the TV shows, you know, they're not really meeting expectations when it comes to the exact numbers that they really want to achieve. So, with that being said and all, now the ultimatum by Disney, alright, is of course that Disney is said to now be immediately lowering the marketing campaign as a result of Kennedy's story choices and putting a limitation on how often this will be promoted on TV and the internet. They have already informed Kathleen Kennedy about this, and that this is a consequence of her making such a drastic change for the ending of The Acolyte, and how it really is considered controversial. Now, they know that this is going to create backlash, and I think that's why they're going to hold back on the marketing. You know, if you look at The Last Jedi, they marketed that movie so well to the point where we thought it was going to be the best movie ever, right? Turned out to be the opposite. So overall, guys, you know, drop a comment below. Let me know what you guys have to say about all this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to